So, hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 157 of Level Up. 60 minutes, of course, of live Q&A, where your questions really do drive the show. Now, Adriana and I think Ella today are both over in the chat. I can certainly see Adriana already is over there. So please do let them know your name and, of course, the city from where you are joining the show today. They're going to post some links into the chat to vote up the questions that you would most like answered, and also, of course, for you to be able to add your own. So if your question is selected, your name, it's going to appear in the credits at the end of the show. So do get your questions in early, folks, and stay with us to see all of that happening today. It's true to say, I think, we face a whole range of different cyber threats, some which are relatively easy to spot and we're becoming more familiar with, the obvious kinds of ones, but some are really quite sophisticated and far more tricky and kind of get through our obvious lines of defences. We get scams, of course, and people phishing for our personal information and our organisation's information and so on. And there are, of course, much more sophisticated attempts to disrupt our personal, our family, business, and even our government services as well. So look, how do you tell the very best from all the rest when it comes to cybersecurity training? What should you be looking for? And indeed, what does good look like when it comes to choosing great cyber education and training? Today, we've got a brilliant panel of experts lined up to help us all figure this stuff out. So let's jump straight in and meet them. Joining us for his first episode of Level Up today is Dave Blight. He's a detective over with the City of London Police here in the UK and has a background in major crime investigation, things like digital forensics and cryptocurrency, for instance. And from the largest, I think it's fair to say, most complex cases all the way down to the smallest, Dave and his colleagues work tirelessly to help keep the City of London a safe place to live and, of course, to work as well. So welcome to Level Up, Dave. Great to see you.
Thanks very much, Nick. It's great to be here and represent the City of London Police and the Cyber Griffin team, which I work on a daily basis to deliver training and services to businesses all around the city. So thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And we'll hopefully hear a little bit more about that a wee bit later on in the show. Sarbojit Bose rejoins us, of course. He's a regular panelist on Level Up. He's the owner and managing director over at Cyberservices in Singapore, where he leads a team to deliver training and consulting to a very broad client base, from corporates to the most niche of organizations. Welcome back to Level Up, Sarbojit. Great to see you again, my friend.
Thank you, Nick, for having me and all the Level Up team and also the panelists and as well our listeners and those who are joining us from across the globe, because it's only for you that we are here. And let's have a nice time for the next 60 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much. You're always so delightful, Sarbojit. It's if you've never been to Singapore, by the way, very typical warm welcome awaits you. Very polite, very wonderful people, and I always leave a little heavier than when I arrive because the food is eclectic. David Clarke, he joins us today as well. He's the Chief Technology Officer, of course, over at the Trustbridge, and he's also the founder of the GDPR Technology Forum, which has grown incredibly now to a membership of over 24,000 people. So it's a brilliant forum to join, helps so many different people from around the world. He's an author, of course, in his own right, and he does contribute to a wide range of communities, I think it's fair to say, and standards bodies as well. So welcome back to Level Up, David. Great to see you again.
Thanks a lot, Nick. Pleasure to be here. Hopefully this will be a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right. And I'm loving your multicolourful background today, David. Thank you very much for going the extra mile. And
I borrowed it off John Wick 4 movie. I thought he uses a lot of pink and blue, and I thought, you know what? I'll use that as my background.
Well, there you go. You see, we learn something new every day, don't we? It's a fabulous look anyway. Mart Rovers is the president, of course, at INTERPROM. I think he's our most frequent panelist on Level Up over the 100 and so episodes now, who both in Europe and in the USA INTERPROM provide leadership, of course, and coaching to their clients from the C-suite down to the individual contributor. With a background in service management, Mart's career has focused on building communities, building effective teams, and ensuring better outcomes for all of his clients. So welcome back to the program, Mart. Great to see you.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, APMG, and thanks for everyone tuning in. It's a pleasure to be with such an esteemed panel to answer all the questions. And I'd like to start with a quote to get us going from John McAfee in 1988. John McAfee, the founder of McAfee Antivirus, he said, "The problem of viruses is temporary and will be solved in 2 years."
1988. Okay. All right. Well, very good. Well, of course, now we have existential challenges as well. We might actually get some questions in around the kind of extension of the bad actor into the bad artificial intelligence actors as well that may be out there, or going equipped these days might be going equipped with a bot as well as a human being or a sack of technology tools to be able to choose from. Charlotte Miller is our question master for today. She's joining us from, I think, the very sunny Thames Valley in the United Kingdom at the moment. So not many people are going to be working just right now today, Charlotte. It's so rare for us to get the sunshine. Here, how has your week been?
I was going to say they're not going to be outside enjoying the sunshine or working because they're here watching the Level Up episode.
Good point. Good point. Thank you. We're keeping the economy going. So that's a really good point to make. So thank you for that. I'm sure that the Chancellor will be super happy with us today. So excellent. Well, let's jump straight into it. I can see lots and lots of people online. So we are going to come to you. We've got people from all over the world. We've got Cape Town represented, Swaziland. We've even got Winnish, which is actually quite a small place, but I do know it. And so it's pretty local to where I am as well. So very good. So thank you for getting Winnish on the map. We'll hear more from those folks very shortly. Charlotte, save me from my own incompetence. Let's jump in and we'll take our first question, please.
Thanks, Nick. Our first question today is from Rebecca. Do you have any tips for deciding what level of training is required? How in-depth does the training need to be to improve cybersecurity outcomes?
Okay, very good. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Brilliant question. Mart, why don't you start us off and then we'll hear from Sarbojit next.
When it's about security, the main one I always focus on and that I advise is awareness training, awareness around security, to raise awareness across the organizations, the whole organization, since there's still people around us that, they don't live and breathe security and feel like it's nothing to worry about. So to me, awareness training around security would be something to focus on.
Okay, thank you. And I think you're right, because the first starting point, isn't it, is to become consciously incompetent for education and training, if that makes sense. Because if you're unconsciously incompetent, you think you're amazing and you don't think that you need any help. So raising that consciousness is a super important first step. Thank you very much indeed, Mart. Great point to make. Sarbojit, and then we'll hear from David.
Right. Well, Mart said it, that, as we say, that security is everyone's responsibility, not just one team. But having said that, what I want to emphasize is for any organization today, it's all about risk. What risk am I trying to address? And it is basically the critical infrastructure for an organization, maybe a critical system or any such thing. So whatever I'm trying to protect, I need to have competency on that, and we need to having training done in that area. So it is very much about the organization. We may need people to be trained so they can work on projects on technology side, or they can be on the operation side, or they can be even today they're like red team, blue team, or even purple team. So there are a lot of areas in cybersecurity today where we need to have training. So do your risk analysis first and then decide what needs to be done. Thank you.
Okay, it's a really good point to make. And I think I was chatting with a colleague whose specialism is asset management. And it sounds obvious at first. If you're a small business, if you're an independent, owner of, say, a retail shop, you probably know what your IT assets are. But as soon as you scale that up a little bit and then up a little bit further, actually keeping track of everything that makes up your infrastructure, the kit that you own and the kit that you effectively rent through things like the cloud, becomes ever increasingly complicated. And knowing what you've got and therefore what you need to protect is actually a really important part of that, solving that initial consultancy puzzle of what kind of things do we have and what sort of protection do we need on each of the things and so on. Excellent. Thank you, Sarbojit. David, your thoughts, and then we'll hear from Dave.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Totally agree with everybody else. I think kind of two areas that we would normally focus on is kind of managing incident escalation training. I think if people don't know how to escalate an incident and who to, you've lost valuable time. They don't need to know how to fix an incident. They just need to know who to call, who can help them, even if it isn't an incident, because most of the time you may not know until you've looked at it. And even when you have looked at it, you're never sure kind of what the scope is. And that needs to go to the right people straight away. The other component is we help a lot of companies get certified, ISO 27001, SOC 2. And what you can do with that is you'll have a whole number of policies, maybe, 30 to 50. Not every member of staff needs to know those policies, but certain departments will, like HR, joiner movers, leavers, access control, procurement, all will need specialist types of overview on what they can do. And so it's really focusing the training on the right people who are doing it for their everyday job, rather than training everybody in everything, because really that doesn't help them do their work, and they need to sort of run the business, not learn about security in every aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to pick your brains, if I may, David, on that 3-letter acronym, not the ISO bit, but the SOC part. So just help for those folks in the audience who are less familiar with that term. What is SOC? It's
an American standard, SOC 2, for attestation of security. It's a sort of similar to what we do on ISO. I mean, it's not a framework, strictly speaking, but it can align with the framework, and many companies use it to align with NIST or ISO 27001. Okay. So what we've found is if you're doing a lot of business in the US, they love you to have SOC 2. If you're more in Europe, ISO 27001.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much indeed. That's great. Thank you. Dave, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, thank you. Really good points from the panel so far. When I look at this question, I kind of look at the outcomes word there. And how do you measure whether or not the security training has been effective? And I think this is a really big question, because you don't want to find that you are lacking because you are post-incident. So I guess it raises a wider question of how do we test whether our security training is effective? What methods do we use? And then how do we then use those metrics? I think quite often, particularly if you think of phishing, just as an example, we often look at it as a pass-fail. We don't often look at why we've passed, and we don't often look at why we've failed, which probably misses out quite a lot of the learning. And if you can answer those questions as to why they were successful, as to what they picked out or what they didn't pick out, perhaps they were wrong in their assessment and it was chance. You can then learn to improve your security training for your staff. So perhaps that's a wider question. Sorry to answer a question with a question. That's where my head goes.
Yeah, no, and that's fantastic, because I agree with you. I think many of us, if you're working for a professional services company or a large organization of any kind of scale, the chances are that you have been through in your past what I would describe as early sheep dip type training. So it may have been in something like anti-money laundering or something like that, and it was fairly simplistic approach in the early days, to help everybody understand that, in the unlikely event of you ever meeting somebody on a train that passed you a brown envelope full of money, the chances were that it wasn't a good idea to accept it, that kind of thing. But the challenge for us on a day-to-day basis is that people are making sophisticated decisions in real time. So to your point, they need to decide these things in real time. They don't have the benefit of booking a slot. I'm expecting now, somebody to come fishing for information. I'll deal with it at 3:15 on a Thursday afternoon. You have to decide in real time. And learning those lessons is a brilliant insight, actually. So we might come back to that and perhaps ask you to share some of your experience and best practices in how do you actually do that? How do you help colleagues learn from the successes and also the challenges of the past? Thank you, Dave. That's really great. Sarbojit, I'm going to come back to you briefly on this before we move over to social. Final thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I just want to add a little bit on the SOC. Now, it comes from AICPA, which is an Association of International Certified Professional Accountants, and they have some compliance reporting of SOC, which is nothing but system and organization controls. There are 3 types: SOC 1, SOC 2, SOC 3. And again, SOC 2 has type 1 and type 2. In cloud computing, we use this very often and very commonly, but we can use it for other purpose. And today there is a SOC for supply chain and cybersecurity as well. So if you need to know more, please visit AICPA-CIMA. I guess all these people can learn more. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you, Sarbojit. That's super helpful. Social team, we will get some links for the audience into the chat momentarily. We're just preparing those for everybody. In the meantime, let's jump over to the audience and see who we've got joining in around the world. Mashari, thank you so much from Riyadh. So thank you for joining us. Our temperatures in the UK are positively cool for you, my friend. But we're feeling the heat a little bit today. Summer is approaching, at long last after the grey days of wintertime. Nigel is at the other end of the spectrum. I'm afraid summer is over. Never mind, Nigel. Southern Hemisphere, now South Africa. So they're into their kind of winter time, variable weather, rainy one day, cool the next, warm the third day, and so on, and rinse and repeat. Very good. Nice to have you with us today, Nigel. Sergio is joining us from Texas. Mart and I were sharing some discussion about Texas a little bit earlier on in our pre-show conversation. So brilliant, Sergio, for joining us all the way from the USA. Excellent. And Nancy, thank you very much. Finally, we have Winnersh on the map. Okay. Actually, quite a little centre, quite a gem in the Thames Valley. The Thames Valley is our kind of closest that we get in the UK to Silicon Valley. So we have a lot of high-tech industry, actually, in this kind of part of the world. So thank you very much for tuning in today, Nancy. Great to have you online. Excellent. Okay, well, look, let's move on. I can see some questions coming in from the audience as well. So, Charlotte, let's take our next question, please.
Thanks, Nick. We've got a live question next, and the live question is from Maria Teresa. Maria Teresa asks, how much second-level security product knowledge should a program manager have to efficiently manage their projects?
Okay, all right. Sarbojit, start us off on this, please, and then we'll hear from Mart.
Hi, Maria. That's a very interesting question. Now, in fact, I started my career as project and program. And when I went into managing projects for banks, then I found out that my engineers are talking in jargons of cybersecurity where I am not understanding what they're trying to say. So then I started to read up things, and they say, oh, level 1, layer 2 switches. And I thought, how many layers of switches they're going to put? I only know a few layers in my burger. But then I started to learn more. So it all depends on the type of projects that you run and in the technology area. So if you are a project manager on cloud, you may want to start in cloud. If you're in infrastructure, then you might want to take up some training on infrastructure, application, or operations. It depends. So, but it is very important because the project managers will have to manage the whole project and understand the risk and also the threats that come out of it. So we need to have that knowledge. The project and program manager absolutely have to know the jargons. Otherwise, they will be taken for a ride by the IT savvy engineers.
Thanks so much. And I think you're absolutely right. Earlier in my career, there was quite a separation between the disciplines. You know, a project manager may not have any understanding really of technology. More recently, I think throughout my career, those two worlds, you know, if you drew a Venn diagram of knowledge and experience, actually they overlap really, really heavily now. So, you know, it's almost interchangeable sometimes, depending, of course, you know, the discipline that you're in and so on. But we all use technology a great deal, you know, now day to day. So thank you, Sarbojit. Mart, your thoughts, please, and then we'll go to David.
Thank you, Nick. Maria Theresa, great question. And indeed, what Sarbojit was talking about, know the language, right? But at the same time, you don't have to be the expert. So my recommendation would be find somebody on your team or outside of your organization you can trust and bring in that expert as your advisor or the one who can keep people honest. So tap into your network and get the right people, surround you with the right people. So indeed, you won't be taken for a ride. So having said that, at least have some foundational knowledge as a project manager. Again, you don't have to be the expert, but it wouldn't hurt to take foundation type training to at least know the basics, and you can build on that.
I think that's so important as well, because often project managers are trying to deliver in quite constrained circumstances. Let me put it that way. You know, whatever those constraints might be, whether they're budget or time or the minimum viable product that you're focused on and so on. There are always these variables, aren't there? But often there is a constraint. And it is tempting sometimes to allow something which may be effective in the short term to introduce vulnerability that you would never do if you were just a little bit more aware of what that might bring about. The unintended consequence, in other words, is kind of where I'm going with that. Excellent. Thank you, Mark. Really good point. David, your thoughts, please.
I think it's a really good question, and I think it's probably true of most projects. Project managers ideally need to know a lot about that subject matter when they're managing these projects. When I've been in senior positions for large companies, and at one time I had 5 project managers managing over 22 cyber projects, and every one of them I had to kind of go through because everyone was getting the wrong end of the stick. The right stuff was not being delivered. And as Dave says, you know, you need to really focus on the outcome. What are we going to get out of this? Why are we even doing it in the first place? Very, very difficult. This area can become very complex, and it's like the story of the four blind men and the elephant. You get that all the time. You know, you may get somebody from risk have a perfect view, but actually they've missed a whole area. And the same with the cyber teams. And putting it together is a lot of knowledge and a lot of skill.
Yeah, I can completely agree with that. One of the areas that is developing a great deal at the moment, of course, is robotic process automation and the sharing of information between islands of data within organizations and between partners and so on. So even understanding the fundamentals of how that works and the cybersecurity risks around moving data around, even if it's internally within an organization, are you breaking your own rules kind of things? It's actually super useful information to be able to have and will allow you to scope pieces of work that are very effective for a business and also keep you compliant and conformant with whatever regulatory environment you're working in. So great advice. Thank you, David. Let's move on if we can then a little bit. Brilliant question, by the way, Marie Theresa. I think she is in Yorkshire. I may pronounce this incorrectly. Is it Hayworth in West Yorkshire, actually? So thank you very much, Marie Theresa, for your brilliant question and for challenging the panel so very well indeed. Your name is definitely going to appear in the credits at the end of the show. Charlotte, let's move on. We'll take our next question, please.
Thanks, Nick. We've got another live question that's been submitted a few minutes ago from MN Mohammed on LinkedIn. Can you elaborate on the risk analysis point? How can I prepare for that in a large-scale business?
Okay, now, Mart, you've done a lot of these studies, as have other members of the panel. So break the problem down a little bit for us, please, and then we'll hear from Sarbojit next.
Another excellent question. Thank you, Nick. Doing risk analysis starts with what was mentioned earlier. Know the stuff that you have, as in what are the things that I care about, my assets, my critical assets, the fancy name for that. That's where it all begins, as in what is it what I want to protect, what is near and dear to me as my organization. And then particularly, of course, from a security perspective. To find the people in your organization that own these assets, not necessarily that they bought them, but in other words, they know these assets inside out and know the potentially also the risks that these assets may be exposed to. That's quite a lift usually, and it's quite an awareness. But the true owner of assets who cares about assets, you'll be amazed how much they know about, potential threats or vulnerabilities to these assets from a security perspective, based on experience, based on what has been published. But that's where it all begins. And I want to leave it at that to give Sarbojit his perspective. I'm sure he's going to add another nice layer on top of this. Speaking of layers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you're right. There will be people in the large organizations that know this area. Your challenge in a large enterprise is to know who is that person, because their job title doesn't always necessarily tell you the informal owner of the knowledge, does it? We all know people in large organizations who are the informal knowledge owner and provider to so many others, but their job title doesn't tell you that. You have to know that organization. So if you're consulting with them, finding those key people is super, super important to the success of that consultancy piece of work. Sarbojit, your thoughts, then we'll go to David.
Right. Well, thanks, Mohammed. I mean, this is a very tricky question about in large-scale business doing risk management. Now, the first thing is I would assume that this organization should have an enterprise risk management capability or a program established, because without that, anyone who wants to do this will not have been empowerment to do this thing. So first of all, the governance structure must acknowledge and set up a risk management team for the enterprise, and then for each of the function area, there needs to be a risk management person designated. Now, the risk ownership should always be with the asset owner. So what are the critical assets of the business? As Mart says, when it is identified, those people needs to be accountable, answerable for the risk from those assets. And only then we can understand the threats and the vulnerabilities. Then we will be able to do analysis, because for analysis, we need to know the risk, quantify it qualitatively, quantitatively, or semi-quantitatively, whatever way. There are many other tools to do it and to prioritize them before we can even do any mitigation on the risks. So do know who is doing what, and identify the risk orders so we can move forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Thanks so much. David, final thoughts on this one?
Yeah, thanks very much, Sarbojit. I totally agree with everything. Risk is one of those things that some companies manage it as a risk list rather than manage the risks. And so generally the way that I've kind of often done it is we've got to have objectives. What is the company's objectives to cyber? Is everyone agreed to that? Because once we've got the objectives, we know actually why we're defending stuff and what the value of managing these risks are. And of course, then they're going to link to, as Sarbojit says, the assets. It's also going to link to the policies. Why bother having a policy if you're not going to link it to cyber objectives? And then that will link to, what controls you're going to use. Are you going to use ISO controls? Are you going to use NIST controls to give you a guideline? And then it makes it much easier to decide what the risk is. If I see a company and they talk about risk, I go, well, have you got a policy for that? If you haven't got a policy, why are we doing it? What reason are we doing it? It doesn't make any sense. And then that will fit into your training, because then if you have a risk that nobody uses passwords, you obviously kind of need a training course to kind of beef that up. And it should all flow together, and they should all link together. There shouldn't be silos. The famous one, I don't know whether it's happened to everyone else. You'll ask people around a table to estimate a risk 1 to 5. You'll have a developer one end, you'll have an IT manager the other end. The IT manager will go, I think the risk is high, 5. Developer will go 0. Then you'll take an average of that and you get 2.5. So actually you've learned nothing from it, yeah. And when you put those metrics down, actually everyone goes, oh, the risks are kind of average. Well, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, really.
And it's having a defined methodology that you cannot have a 0 and you cannot have a 5 without good reason or evidence. And that must link to your company's cyber objectives.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're really right. So many of these things, particularly the self-service questionnaires, it's a bit like going online. I don't know if you've ever done this when you've been thinking about changing, your employer or your career or something like that, or even you doing a 360-degree feedback. They've often included a self-perception inventory of some kind. Are you an extrovert or an introvert? Are you this color person or that color person? Do you enjoy these sorts of settings? Are you effusive in your contribution or more reflective? And all of those kinds of things, right? And the challenge is sometimes you actually do need somebody as an expert to help you interpret the outcome. It might be self-service, but if you don't understand what it's telling you and you can't interpret it, it's not that helpful. So I would really encourage people to develop a relationship, with somebody that you can trust, that gets your industry, that understands you as a client, and that you can work with over time is the most important thing, because these things are evolving constantly. David, final thoughts on this, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, just to kind of give you another example. A couple of years ago, I was working with a very big company in the city, and they asked me to review the CISO's risk list. And he had a very impressive list, 9 risks, but fundamentally, they were all guys wearing hoods. Really, that could have been 1 risk, not 9 risks. So I said, why have you got 9 risks all about guys wearing hoods? And he goes, I haven't got enough resource. And I said, thank you. That's your biggest risk. You haven't got enough resource for this particular environment.
Yeah, absolutely right. And so often I think that organizations are only then willing to face up to it post-event.
Post-event is brilliant. It's fantastic.
Yeah. And if I might come to you, Dave, in your experience, when you're invited into organizations who have, kind of been through the mill to some extent or another, do you find that the appetite for change post-event, there's a kind of a window, a time window post-event where there is a greater appetite, to make this kind of change and invest more in this sort of, resilience, if you like, improving that capability?
I think there definitely is, Nick. I think most, particularly IT managers that I would speak to pre-event, they're crying out for support from the exec or the board, whoever it is that holds their finances. But it often is an event that causes pain, is one that loosens the knot on the purse strings. It's then just a case, obviously, from their point of view, of being as economical and as efficient as they can with the budgets they are given to mitigate that risk and use that as wisely as they can, given the window of opportunity they have to do the work that they've always wanted to do.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. So do seize the moment, but if you can do, it's always better to prevent than it is to actually have to go through that in the first place, because, a reputation that can be built over many years can be lost in moments through this kind of thing. And the impact, of course, can be very severe indeed. So very good. Let's move on if we can, Charlotte, and we'll take our next question as they're all stacking up, I can see.
Thanks, Nick. We've got a question from Javed. I would like to begin a cybersecurity professional career. What training and certification should I start with?
Okay, well, Dave, why don't you start us off first, and then we'll hear from Mart next.
Firstly, Java, that's a brilliant.
Have we just lost Dave's audio, or is it just me?
We've lost Dave's audio.
We have lost Dave's audio. So apologies, Dave. We're going to come back to you in a moment, just while we kind of purge that technical gremlin from the system, if you like. Dave, can you hear us clearly now?
Can you hear me?
We can indeed, my dear chap. I do apologise. Please continue.
It wasn't that insightful, the bit that you missed. Don't worry. I'll start again, as I've been given the opportunity.
Please.
No, Javid, that's a brilliant question. And cybersecurity is an incredibly rewarding career to go into. It's also incredibly varied, which is why it's a great question to start off with. Websites like UK Cybersecurity Council, they have cyber career pathways. So if you have an idea of where you'd like to start off with, whether it be something in digital forensics, working with crypto, secure system development, wherever it might be, there are lists in there and kind of gives you an idea of what the roles typically are and where to start off with certifications. If you've already found that point, then you can always do prospective job searches on LinkedIn and see what employers are asking for in the job roles that you actually be interested in at the salary points that you'd be happy to accept. So there's 2 points to start your search.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. And I would really like to echo the point about looking for relevance. If jobs are asking for certain, certifications, certain skills and so on, think about which ones are going to be most relevant to you in order to be able to secure that. Because a certification early career really crystallizes your aptitude into evidence that you can then present to your own employer at the moment for a change of role internally. And that's the most common way to get into it. Or alternatively, if you need to change industries or change employers and so on, then it gives you that passport, doesn't it, to allow you to kind of move on with some confidence. So thank you very much, Dave. Mart, your thoughts on this, and then we'll hear from Sarbojit.
Thank you, Nick. My personal favorite is ISO IEC 27001 foundation training to start there. The reason is that this ISO IEC standard is industry independent and also independent of size of organization. So early in your career, you want to keep all your options open. So start with something like ISO IEC 27001 plus. It's a risk-based standard, so you learn all about risk management, how to assess risks, how to mitigate risks, what the controls are to mitigate these risks. It's also something that comes with the standard. And not to mention the fact that it is also including organizational aspects, as in to make the standard actually, to embed the standard within the organization so it doesn't become this additional thing you do. It becomes something that you do because it's something that's part of your job. That's simply how you work. So I like the standard for many reasons. It's very generic, not too in-depth. And again, it leaves all the options open, but it lays a very strong foundation for anything else you start doing after that when you start specializing.
Yeah, absolutely right. And so thank you very much. There's also in the social chat, if you're in the UK, do look up the UK National Cybersecurity Centre. There are a variety of these around the world, sponsored by your government, whichever country you're actually in. Some of them are direct government departments. Some of them are agencies working on behalf of government, protecting citizens, protecting trade, within your geography. So do look for local guidance as well as the international standards. But ISO 27001, my understanding is pretty much underpins, as Mart has said, any industry, any geography. So it's a brilliant first step to have. You will never regret getting your head around that, even though at first it may feel a little daunting. Nonetheless, stick with it because it's really, really worthwhile. So an excellent start to anybody's career there. Thank you very much indeed. So thank you, Mart. Sarbojit, your thoughts, please.
Yeah, for people like Javed who wants to know that what are the type of trainings and certification as a beginner in cybersecurity, will be the first, as Mart said, Dave said, to go and search in some of the places like for UK or in US, there are those standards which are available. Even in Singapore, there are such things. Now, there is one more, which is international cybersec.org, and I will be giving the URL. Now, if you go there and if you want to search, it's wonderful. They will provide you entry level, mid-level, and advanced level, and then also the different kind of roles in networking, software development, system engineering, finance, security, intelligence, IT, and then also different kind of basic level, entry level roles. And also they will tell you the progression and what are the dependencies of one to the other, how many types of job openings are there, and what could be the average salary. So from there, you can then come down to some of the sites, or from there, you can also understand what kind of a training you need. And you may go to Indeed.com, or you can go to JobStreet, you can go to many other such sites and see what are the jobs in IT security or cybersecurity they are asking for at a beginner's level. Well, then I guess you are good to go from there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Sarbojit. Dave, let me come back to you. Practical thoughts. Is there a framework? Is there a place that you can go where you can kind of, because sometimes people don't necessarily, when I was at school, it was about 100 years ago, admittedly, but you were either a fireman, a policeman, a teacher, a doctor, a dentist, whatever. So careers in those days were actually fairly simple things. Now there are so many roles and so many opportunities for people who are early career. It's hard to see the wood for the trees.
Certainly. And I thoroughly agree with what Mart's saying, is to try and keep a generic and open mind about where you want to start things and don't narrow off too soon. But you're right, there are websites that you can go to. There's lots of infographics actually by the main training providers of the suggestions of where they'd recommend you go. So they are easily findable via Google. But as I mentioned earlier, the UK Cybersecurity Council have quite a good one. And just as kind of a side thought here is, often you look at the training and it can cost thousands of pounds for you to transition. But there are lots of good free resources that you can use, and ex-colleagues of mine have used them to transition from policing to a cyber career. There's lots of great free resources such as edX, run by Harvard, as well as courses on Udemy, which can give you a foundation, particularly if you're starting as kind of a fresh slate. So
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. And I would really echo that. Your kind of basic understanding you can get relatively quickly and at very low cost indeed. And of course, the whole point about Level Up is we all learn from each other all of the time. So I would chip in, just simply subscribe. Subscribe to the APMG International YouTube channel, subscribe to the Level Up weekly summaries that we send out, and you'll get lots of little hints and tips and things. And of course, everybody on the panel, their LinkedIn profiles are actually on our website. So you can just click on apmginternational.com, go to events, choose today's event, and you'll see a little link through to Mart or Sarbojit or David or Dave, and just connect with them, all right? Because we do welcome professional connections. We don't really want people to sell things to us. Okay, so if that's your idea, please don't do that. But if you want to join us and learn together and grow your career with us, then we'd be delighted, to help in whatever way we can. Excellent. And we've got a QR code there on screen to help you through the ISO 27001 training jungle as well. Excellent. Look, panel, we're running out of time, so we are going to need to pick up the pace a little bit. But I can see we've still got live questions coming in to be able to answer. Charlotte, let's press on. We'll take our next question, please.
Thanks, Nick. We've had to shorten this question a little bit to get it on screen. A live LinkedIn viewer, Mondebeo, asks, the introduction of technology is contributing to higher crime levels, domestic violence, sexual offences, etc. Do you have any advice on cyber awareness training that could help?
Yeah, now just to give you a little bit of background, panel, on the social chat, I do think that Mbungani's background is in policing, okay, in his country. So he's actually saying, look, I'm working in these areas as an investigator. You know, what are the thoughts of the panel? You know, because they're seeing an increase in cases. You know, technology seems to be making things worse, not better. You know, so where should they begin, do you think, you know, as a policing unit? Where could they begin? What are our thoughts on that? Dave, would you like to kind of start us off? I mean, it's a bit of an it depends question for us. It's a bit unfair, but we just want to give Mbungani a little bit of advice if we can do.
Sure. First thing you can do is connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to link you in with the UK policing package that we have. So our team has worked with the National Protect unit to develop a domestic violence cybersecurity package. So I'm more than happy to link you in with them. But you're right, this is a growing problem that we're seeing within the UK with everyone being so connected. Particularly thinking about things like cyber stalking, coercive controlling behavior. When you're linked in with someone's like Apple account or Google account, if the abusive partner knows passwords and connects in with that, you can see immediately how this is a huge problem for victims of this and people going through it, which is why we've developed packages to help educate people as to how better protect themselves. It's a huge question that I'm going to do complete disservice to. But if anyone on this is affected by that or is interested from international law enforcement, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to continue that conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we really do appreciate people thinking this kind of stuff through. And I'll give you a real worked example, okay, if we can go back to panel, in that, you know, I am quite a forgetful person. So I have a little AirTag, which is an Apple AirTag. Other devices are available, by the way, okay, which is attached to something like, I don't know, something important like some set of keys or something like that. And I'm super consciously aware that effectively that is tagging me as well as the actual bunch of keys, if that makes sense. So there are rather all of these considerations, aren't there, around the ethics of the use of this kind of technology. And indeed, people who don't have a good moral compass exploit technology. Often they're very inventive and they exploit technology as early adopters, with the rest of us thinking, I never thought that you would use that anything other than positively. So thank you, Dave, and your team for leading the way on that kind of work and on providing assistance as well to others around the world. And I do think that there are centres of excellence all around the world, different countries, that are thinking up ways in which to counter this kind of misuse of technology as well. So that's great. Thank you very much indeed. Charlotte, time is not on our side. Let's take our next question.
Thanks, Nick. We've got another question from Maria Teresa, who is a LinkedIn viewer today. As AI technologies develop, how do you perceive development and automation to bridge the gap of cybersecurity professionals? I'm so sorry.
That's quite all right. Don't worry. It's all of the right words. So don't worry about it. I think we've got the gist of it. Sarbojit, your thoughts?
Well, this is a very interesting topic, Maria Teresa. Well, I also lost it there. In Singapore, we are talking about this thing very commonly. Now, but my point is we can have the best of technology that today we have. AI has come in already. It's not that it is developing, it has been there. It's not that ChatGPT is the beginning of it. We have been working with AI dependent technologies and tools for some time across the globe. Now, the point is we can have the best technology, but if we as human beings, if we do not do the right things, then no technology can protect us perfectly. And if we go and analyze each and every incident that has happened of breaches, we will see it is end of the day, 90 to 95% of the cases, it is the person or a human being who has committed a wrong decision, an error, or something which has caused things to happen. So that is the problem. It is not about the AI, it is about bridging the human people and the resources there. Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Sarbojit. I think that automation gives you the ability to filter faster. All right, is what I would say in this area. Artificial intelligence allows you to filter better, perhaps, but ultimately, even the most advanced analysis engines are based on models, and those models have to learn stuff. And human beings have a broader experience and also an ethical anchor, which can alter the way in which you look and interpret patterns and the absence of certain patterns in data sets. So I would say the perfect blend is really of the human and the technology in this circumstance. And don't underestimate the power of great data analysis. There are some brilliant people out there who can help you make sense of stuff that at first glance appears impenetrable. And it's wearing that kind of cap of curiosity, if you like, in your organization, looking at data in a different way, looking at things in a different way that will really help you. Very last question, please, Charlotte Miller, if we can do, and then we'll go to closing remarks of the panel. We'll need to be quick with this one.
Thanks, Nick. And we have got a live question from one of our viewers. They ask, I would like to hear the panel opinion on the psychological dimension of cybersecurity, either on the poor user who delivered the ransomware to the organization and to the analysts who are overwhelmed by alerts and fears, which can increase burnouts and fears.
It's certainly a kind of anxiety-inducing role, isn't it? When you see a lot of this stuff, coming across your desk because you understand the potential impact of it. Sarbojit, what's your experience in this? Just briefly, please.
Right. Now, as I said earlier, it's all about the people. So as human beings, we have the psychological dimension in us. And the problem there it is, we may sometimes think we may be complacent about thinking that what we are doing is good enough, and then we drop our guards. And sometimes that's what causes things go wrong. Now, when we have to encounter this kind of malicious activities, we have to think. So people like Dave, who are from law, what they will say, we have to think like the criminals, so we know what the criminals or these adversaries are going to do. So that's why we have the white hats, the gray hats who are there. But then the problem is the distinction is very thin. What hat I am wearing any day can be the thing of a controversy. So I would like to stop here, and then maybe David can take it on from here.
Okay, thanks very much, Sarbojit. Now, David, your thoughts of the psychological impact?
I think part of this is kind of being prepared correctly. We know these things are going to happen. They will happen, yeah. It's how you handle them. And, when I work with companies, I kind of make sure that, and I referred to this earlier, is having an escalation process. I'm not talking about an incident response plan. We've all seen those. We've all got them in our cupboard somewhere, yeah. It's how is that train of thought going to go? You need a triage. You need to know what the triggers are. How do I escalate it? Who do I escalate it to? When do I need senior management involved? And that whole journey, I will make sure that anyone who's on that list from the CEO downwards, is fully briefed knows what to do, knows what to say. Nobody knows exactly what's going on when these things happen, but you still need to have a strategy of what's going to happen. And we need to make sure that, the CEO is doing the right thing, the COO is doing the right thing, all through the kind of management chain. So when it does happen, it's not a surprise and it's not a panic stations. It's okay. We've got to do this. We've got to do this till we find a plan and that we have a confidence level, even if it's a bad confidence level of what's going on. Otherwise, people will get burnt out. They will get overwhelmed. I've worked with companies who go, we've got it all in place. And I go, okay, so you've got a problem running 72 hours. How's your comms team going to handle this? You've only got 2 people. Are they going to get any sleep in those 3 days? 4 days in my last? All that has to be planned for. So there are no real surprises.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. What we learn as well, this is episode 157, of these live events. And we do this twice a week, every week. And we do rehearsals as well, in between for different people in different situations. So we've done hundreds of these. And it's by doing it a great deal, that actually teams are able to work together seamlessly from all over the world to fulfill different roles in real time, which is how incidents happen. All right, excellent. Well, thank you very much indeed, panel. Wow, what an eclectic mix of questions that we've had from our audience. Really first-class work to our producers online today. You are the producers of the show. You do amazing things. You ask brilliantly insightful questions. So very well done, everybody. Let's get closing remarks now from the panel. So Mart, if I may, I'm going to come to you first and then Sarbojit.
Thank you, APMG. Thank you, Nick, and the whole team. Thank you, audience. The panel is another great session. It's for a reason that these security sessions rank really, really high when it's about attendance. I want to end with a quote from a White House cybersecurity advisor, Richard Clarke. Since we're talking about training, how much money do you actually spend on training? He actually said, if you spend more on coffee than on IT security, you will be hacked. And he went further. He said, what's more, you deserve to be hacked.
Spend more on coffee than cybersecurity. There you go, you see. And I can imagine, actually, that has been possible in the past. So very good indeed. Thank you so much. Sarbojit and then Dave.
Well, thank you, everyone and in the panel and APMG as well. And of course, all our listeners and the audience. Well, Mart, you always are the best in this, but I would like to have my small contribution. We say that amateurs hack system, but the professional hack people.
Okay. There's a good thought for us all, isn't it? To kind of take away this afternoon in the UK time, at any rate, to be able to think about that people dimension. Yeah, really good point. Well made. Thank you, Sarbojit. Dave and then David.
Yeah, look at the thanks of my colleagues here this morning. It's been great this afternoon, this evening, wherever you are. It's been good fun. And Sarbojit, you've literally stolen my quote from Bruce Schneer. I was going to say exactly the same thing. To echo your point, that cybersecurity, it's not a compliance tick box. You're dealing with real people who have real feelings and real lives. So you need to pick your training partners carefully, and remember at the end of the day, if someone does click on a link, that's still a human that's done that, and they need your ongoing support, both with training, but also potentially on a welfare front as well. So thank you.
Yeah, completely agree with that, and a point really well made. Thank you so much, David, and then we'll hear from Charlotte.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with cyber, strategy will outperform tactics any day. So, training does help. Is it perfect? No, it's compensating for technology that's not fit for purpose. If we had planes like we build technology, none of us would fly. That's why they regulated planes in 1923. Same thing happened with cars in the 60s and 70s. The technology was amazingly cool, but it wasn't regulated. They even had a calculation that basically, one life was worth, $50,000. Who cares? We'll still make unsafe cars. That is now illegal. At the moment, we're kind of getting there, but technology is not regulated enough. And it's easy to blame people. we should really be enforcing our technology and having much better strategies of how we use it.
And, I think you've done a very great job, panel, of elegantly bringing together both the technology and the human dimension today in this blended mix. So thank you very much indeed for doing that. Charlotte, quite an amazing hour. It's gone by super fast. Today, I don't know what time warp zone I'm actually in any longer because it's just flown by.
No, it's been super. A great shout out to all the fantastic questions that have been submitted, and even more so to the panelists. Thank you so much for your wealth of information and giving up your free time, to share this with us. Just a big shout out to Dave Blight, and the City of London Police. A great work that you do along your normal day job as serving police officers. It's such a fantastic team, the Cyber Griffin team, and big applause to you all in that team. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd really like to echo that. Everybody that's working on behalf of the public, wherever you are in the world, thank you very much. We are indeed very grateful for the work that you do, often unseen, quite rightly, and often uncommented upon. So thank you for your service. I'd also like to thank our producers, of course, online for your excellent questions today, and on behalf of you, the panel in turn, for their great answers. Your name is going to come into the credits if your question was selected. So hold on for a few moments more and kind of see that happening. Over on our website, of course, you can search for the answers to all of the questions that have been asked previously across the shows. It's almost 2,000 now in the question bank. It's a really brilliant free resource. Just type in your question and you will find keywords and little video segments for you to watch, usually 2-3 minutes long, that's all. Okay, that may just give you the insight that you need to level up your career. Don't forget, of course, you can listen to the audio versions of all of these shows on your preferred podcast platform. So do download and subscribe to that as well. If you've enjoyed today's session, do tune in on Monday, 8 a.m. UK time, as the team is going to be exploring how to become an authentic leader. Leadership is something that lots of people aspire to, and then they kind of lose themselves a little bit along the way. So how do you remain authentic as a leader? That's really the topic for Monday morning. And then on Wednesday, there's a brilliant show, actually, which is all about the capability. How do you build better capability in business relationship management over at a large multinational organization like Unilever? Okay. And that is kind of linked as well into Friday's show on the 9th, which is all about how to build a career as a business relationship manager. And so you can see how to apply your excitement and thinking from Wednesday's Connect show through to Friday's event. Subscribe to us. And of course, we'll send you a personal summary of what's coming up and how you too can join us here on the panel and level up your career with the APMG. Thanks very much, everybody. Enjoy your weekend. We'll see you next time.